Hi, I'm immigration lawyer John Khosravi. Thanks for watching today as we discuss a very sad situation where a U.S. soldier may not be able to return to the United States despite thinking that they're a U.S. citizen having had a U.S. passport. Stick around and we'll get into it right now. Hi, again, I'm immigration attorney John Khosravi, located in Los Angeles, California, but helping people from across the world immigrate to the United States. Please like, subscribe, and follow this channel for more updates and information and fun news and sometimes sad news about the U.S. immigration process. So today we're going to talk about a story that was published in the Washington Post a few days back on October 6, 2020. And it's a horrible story where this person who went to the military, is an active duty service member of the United States military service, thought he was a U.S. citizen and realized that he apparently may not be, and he may not be able to return to the United States. So let's back it up and start from the beginning to see why a person who's in the Army, who was given a passport, was born in the United States, may not be a U.S. citizen and may not be allowed to re-enter the United States, where they say here in the headline, CBP, the Customs and Border Protection, the customs people that you deal with when you're entering the United States at the airport, may not let him into the United States. Well, this person was born in Manhattan, in New York, and usually that means that you're automatically a U.S. citizen when you're born in the United States. However, that's not always the case, as many of the nuances of immigration law there are that cause these kind of situations. This person's parents were diplomats in the United States. And what happens is, if you're a diplomat, meaning you work for the embassy or consulate or other kind of services for another country in the United States for political and diplomatic purposes, if your child is born in the United States while you're in that service, the child will not automatically become a U.S. citizen, even if they're born here. So this person's parents or father, I think, was a diplomat, and because of that, it may not, and I couch stuff in may because we don't have all the details of the situation. We just have news reports, so I don't want to say for sure that something's the case. But it seems the father was a diplomat, and because of that, when he was born here, he kept his home country citizenship and did not obtain U.S. citizenship. But having had that birth certificate, he still applied for U.S. citizenship, and it's not applied because he thought he already had it. He applied for his U.S. passport, and well, he was a minor, his family probably did. And when they applied for the U.S. passport when he was very young, he was able to get the passport. So this gave him the belief that he actually is a U.S. citizen, and he grew up with that. Years go by. Eventually, around 2015, I think it was, he applied for another passport to renew it. It was denied, and later again in 2018, he was denied. And so the State Department, who's the person that issues U.S. passports, said they should have got the hint right there that there were some mistakes. But he was able to enlist in the military and serve the U.S. Armed Services, and right now is stationed in Seoul, South Korea. And he was going to be discharged and was decided to come back. But the military groups connected with the State Department, they found out this situation, so they may not let him back into the United States. And this is the situation. Even if you don't have a passport, if you have a military card, that serves as a transport document for you to be able to get on a plane and come back to the United States. They may not allow him to use that because they say he was not validly a U.S. citizen. So that's a problem right there. Also, the CBP attaché, this is a person for the Customs and Border Protection in Korea, sent a notice saying they might not let him in even if he tries to come in, because one of the requirements for being able to be admitted or enter the United States is to have a valid travel document. And so if they don't consider that U.S. passport he has or doesn't have, or a visa or the military card as a valid travel document, they could prevent him from entering the United States after entering the airport, maybe put him back on a plane and send him back. So as of now, it seems the military is sending him to Niger and just traveling around overseas. His lawyer is saying they're potentially doing this to not allow the applicant, the foreign person, to be able to defend themselves in the U.S. courts, just to keep him outside. Other government agencies say that's not the case. But this is one of the scary things. We'd ever, especially if you don't contact an immigration lawyer to review it, you probably wouldn't have expected this to be the situation if you didn't have special understanding of the law. You'd think, well, I have a U.S. citizen birth certificate and I have a passport they issued when I was a child. Obviously, I'm a U.S. citizen, and so you have to be aware of this. Now, parents who are diplomats, their countries, home countries, probably have to educate them to say, hey, if you do have a kid while you're in this diplomatic service, your child will not be a U.S. citizen. But who knows if they're listening or not, or what was going on at the time. Also, not every person that works at an embassy for a foreign country will be subject to this. So you have to see what level of staff and work that person was, what kind of particular visa the parent had when they entered the U.S., whether they had a diplomatic visa or some other type of visa. So there's a lot going on there, but it's a sad story. This person thought they were a U.S. citizen. They went to serve the United States military. They're actually stationed overseas. So just to realize that they're not a U.S. citizen and they might be, discharged or kicked out of the military and not be able to return home even. Now, there's more levels to this. The person had then applied for other people's green cards, potentially a spouse, children, or parents, because he thought he was a U.S. citizen. And the government's saying that's potentially a false claim to citizenship because they're saying I'm a U.S. citizen and applying for a benefit. And that's a big crime when it comes to immigration. It's like the death penalty if you claim to be a U.S. citizen where you're not. Now, there'd be challenges to say, well, he was under the mistaken understanding that he was because they gave a passport. He needs to go to court and fight that out to see how it is. The last case that was like this was a woman who went and left the United States to join ISIS in Syria, but she wanted to come back. And the U.S. State Department canceled her passport and did not allow her to come. And when she went to court from overseas, they found a lawyer, filed a lawsuit. She still lost because they said her parents were diplomats when she was born. Because of that, she did not obtain a passport. She had sued and got it before, but on this kind of appeal, on this kind of challenge, the government said, no, it's not correct. She should not have been a U.S. citizen, should not have had a passport. And so they prevented her from coming back to the United States because she lost in court. So these kind of issues happen. This child of a diplomat situation is a weird thing that pops up, and it really changes things up with what we're expecting with regards to automatic citizenship rights. But that's something I definitely want to share with you. That was interesting. Now, there are ways of still becoming a citizen, especially if you had military service, especially before the Trump administration. There were paths to citizenship for someone who signed up and enlisted in the military service. And people in this particular situation that he's in, apparently, according to the article, have been approved and we're able to naturalize. Naturalization is a process of being a non-U.S. person and becoming a citizen, as opposed to being a natural-born U.S. citizen. But there's been military officers who are not citizens. They're naturalized because of their work for the military service in the United States, the Army, Navy, Air Force, and the like. And so it may be the case that he could take advantage of that. Now, it's gotten harder in this administration, but we'll see. There's going to be a fight, and they're going to have to fight it out. Now, they have a wonderful attorney, Margaret Stock. She is well known to be an immigration attorney that focuses on military matters. She's located in Alaska, but helps people from across country. A lot of my clients who have military service issues, most immigration attorneys send it to her because she's so hyper-focused on this area. So hopefully this person who went and served this country, decided to serve America, is able to overcome these kind of issues and obtain their citizenship. If you wanted more information and you wanted a consultation, just email my office at info@jqqlaw.com, or best, just like, subscribe, and ring that bell to get notifications and updates and news information about the U.S. immigration process. Right down one of those buttons below. Until next one, have a good one.